So we've been solving quadratic equations, right? We've been over different ways. We've solved by graphing, we've solved using the square root method, we've solved by factoring, and then we just solved by completing the square. So this is an example. If I want to solve 2x squared minus 5x plus 3, we can solve this one by factoring. So we got 2x and x, and then, right, I got to plug in the factors of 3. When I times them, I get positive 3. When I multiply the outside and the inside, it has to add up to be a negative, so it's got to be 2 negatives. So we've done this before, but problems like this can take a little bit of time with factoring, right? That's negative 2x. That's minus 3x. That gives me negative 5x. I set them equal to 0. 2x minus 3 equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. We solve them both, so my answer is 3 halves and 1. So we've solved equations like this by factoring. We could also complete the square. This one wouldn't be very easy to complete the square with because we'd have to divide by the 2 and we'd end up with a bunch of fractions. We could do it by graphing. Remember, there's some drawbacks to graphing in that if you don't have a graphing calculator, or it's sometimes it just gives you an approximation. Factoring also, this one factors, but it doesn't always work. So all these different methods that we've gone through have their pros and their cons. There's one more method that we're going to go through today, and it's one that always works no matter what. So factoring doesn't always work. Square root method doesn't always work. Graphing doesn't always work. Completing a square does always work, but it's not always easy. So this fifth method is another one like completing the square that always works, and a lot of times it's easier to use than completing the square. So what we're going to do is go over the quadratic formula. So this is the formula. I'm not going to go through where the formula came from in this video, but I'd love to show you if you want to come in sometime. But if I have an equation in a quadratic equation in standard form, that means the x squared term is first, the x term is second, and the constant is third, equals 0. If it's in that form, I can take the numbers, the coefficients, the a, the number in front of x squared, the b, the number in front of x, and c, my constant. I can plug them all into this formula right here, plug b, b, a, and c, and a, and it gives me the answer to the quadratic equation. So let's take that problem up above. This is the same problem, the 2x squared minus 5x plus 3, and I'll show you how this works. So first of all, check to make sure it's in standard form. I've got my squared term, my linear term, and my constant. So a would be the number in front of the x squared. It does not include the x squared, it's just the number in front. So a is 2. It includes the sign that precedes it. So the b is a negative 5 since it's a minus 5. And then c is a positive 3. We're going to take those three numbers and plug it in our formula. So x equals negative b, that'd be a positive 5, plus or minus a square root. Hey, this part right here is the part usually we make most of our mistakes with. So we're going to kind of do that off to the side, the b squared minus 4ac, in just a second. So just leave that for now. But on the bottom I have 2 times a. That'd be 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, let's figure out this part. So I'm going to take b squared. So b is a negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 3. If you're going to use a calculator, you have to be really careful. You have to put the negative inside of the parentheses before we square it. Right, a negative 5 squared is a positive 25. If you put it in like this in your calculator, it will say it's a negative 25. We need to make sure we're squaring the negative also. Okay, so just be careful. Be careful with that. Okay, so we're going to go through and see minus 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. Make sure you do the multiplication before we do the subtraction. Right, orders of operations, we do our power first, then multiplication, then subtraction. So we work that out, it comes out to be 1. We can keep simplifying, right? 5 plus or minus the square root of 1 is just 1. So I have to go 5 plus 1 over 4. And then I have to go 5 minus 1 over 4. So the 5 plus 1 is 6, 6 fourths. Then I have to go 5 minus 1 over 4. That would be 5 minus 1 is 4 over 4. 6 fourths reduces down to be 3 halves. 4 over 4 is 1. There's my 2 answers. Compare that to what we got up above. Right, when we solve by factoring. Same thing. Now, I really honestly, like, I think it's easier to factor to solve this equation. Like, it's probably quicker. There's less calculations to do to get the answer. But if you, the problem with factoring is it doesn't always work. Same thing with square root method. Same thing with solving by graphing. And so this is a fallback where we will, a method that always works no matter what. Let's try another example. Let's just pick one of these off here. Let's do this number 3 right here. All right, so if you look at this one, if your a, the -3, is negative, it's usually easier to times both sides by -1. You don't have to, but if I can make that a positive, it's a little easier to work with. And since it's an equation, I can do that. So if I times the left side by it, I get 3x squared minus 2x minus 7. The right side, I just get 0. So I just flipped all those signs. So a is 3, b is a -2, and c is a -7. So we're going to plug that in our formula. We're going to go x equals -b. It's already a negative, so it becomes a +2 plus or minus the square root all over 2 times 3. Okay, and now I just have to do the b squared minus 4ac. So that would be -2 squared minus 4 times a, 3, times c, which is -7. You've got to be really careful with those signs. -2 squared is 4, minus 4 times, you got to multiply these together first. So 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 times a -7 is a -84. Well, if I have minus and -84, it ends up being a plus, right? That minus and that negative, when you multiply, ends up giving you a positive. We add that together, we get 88. The square root of 88 does not come out evenly, right? If you plug that in a calculator, it's 9 point something. It's an irrational number. But we should try to reduce our answer. So let's take 88 and break it apart. We've done this a lot before. That'd be 8 and 11, 2 and 4, 2 and 2. So I've got a pair of 2s. That gives me a 2 on the outside. And then I've got the 2 and the 11 left over. 2 times 11 is 22. So there's our reduced form. So x equals 2 plus or minus 2 squared of 22 all over 6. So if we keep simplifying there, if there's a factor of this term and this term I can take out, like they both have a factor of 2. So if I factor that out, I'd have 1 plus or minus, and take the 2 out of there, it'd be square root of 22 all over 6. And 6 is 2 times 3. So now I can reduce those two factors. So I have 1 plus or minus square root of 22 over 3. There's not much else I can do there, unless it asks me to approximate. Now up here, that's the exact answer. Really, it's 2 of them, right? One is 1 plus the square root of 22 over 3, and the other one is 1 minus the square root of 22 over 3. So if they ask for the exact answer, that's what we put in. Now, if it does say to round to the nearest 10th, I'd plug that in a calculator. One thing to be aware of, you go to put that in the calculator, if you put it in like this, 1 plus the square root of 22 divided by 3, I'll get the wrong answer, because that's only going to divide the square root of 22 by 3, right? I want to add them together first. So make sure if you do put it in a calculator, put it in like that when we do that. Okay, let me give you, let's do this example 4 up here. Just going to erase this real quick, and we'll try that one so you can see another one. So it's got 4x to the 4th minus 4x equals -1. One thing to be really careful with is you've got to make sure that the equation is in standard form before you go through and solve it. And what I mean by standard form is if you look up here, right, it's got to look, that actually isn't standard form, sorry, I don't know why that y equals there. You want it to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. That's what you want it to look like. This one does not look like that, right? I've got this -1 over here, so I need to move it over, and that would give me 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So you got to put it in that standard form first. So a is 4, b is -4, and c is 1. Okay, so let's plug that in there. I'm going to go negative x equals -b, be a +4 plus or minus the square root of b squared. I'm going to wait on that, but 2 times 4 would be 8. So let's do the b squared. So it's -4 squared minus 4 times a times c. Well, that'd be 16 minus 4 times 4 times 1 is also 16. 16 minus 16 is 0. So now I got 4 plus or minus 0 over 8. Well, 4 plus 0 is 4 over 8, and 4 minus 0 is 4 over 8. So in this case, this is an example where you only get one answer. And the only reason why we only got one answer is because of the 0 right there. So this b squared minus 4ac, that inside part, it actually has a name. It's called the discriminant. If it's positive, you'll get two solutions like we got over here on number 3, or like we got in that other example up above. If it comes out to be 0, you only get one solution. Let's do one where that discriminant actually comes out to be negative. So let's do one more example here. So I'm just going to slide this down here. That one comes out to be a positive. We don't want to do that one. Let's do this one. If we wanted to solve this equation, I have a squared plus 7 equals negative 5x. Okay, we wanted to solve this equation. I shouldn't do x's and a's though, I'm sorry. We'll just make them both a's. So a squared plus 7 equals negative 5a. So first of all, put it in standard form. I did move that a term over to the middle. So I have a squared, I add it over, plus 5a plus 7 equals 0. So what's in front of this term? And there's nothing there, it's a 1. That's a, b is 5, c is 7. Okay, let's plug it in the formula. So I'm going to go a is equal to negative b, negative 5, plus or minus the square root all over 2 times 1, 2 times a, which is just 2. Let's do the b squared minus 4ac. So that'd be 5 squared minus 4 times a times c. So I get 25 minus 28. That's a negative 3. Well, we got a problem there. We go to simplify that. You can't take the square root of a negative number. What that means is this one has no real solution. So you see these three different cases. That b squared minus 4ac, this part right here is really important. If it comes out to be greater than 0, you're going to have two real solutions. Those are like the first two examples we did. If that discriminant, that inside, comes out to be equal to 0, you're only going to have one real solution. If that b squared minus 4ac comes out to be less than 0, then you're going to have no real solution. So you can actually, by looking at that b squared minus 4ac, you can actually tell what kind of answer you're going to end up with. Hey, I want you guys to try one. Work through this problem right here, that 10x squared plus 21 equals negative 29x. Get your answer, pause it, and then come back, and you can check it with what I have. Okay, so just checking with what I have here. There's a, b, c. I plug it all in there. Negative 29 plus or minus. I did the b squared minus 4ac. It came out to be a positive 1. Square root of 1 is 1. All over 20. Added them, divided by 20. Subtracted them, divided by 20. Simplified them. There's my answer. Okay, hopefully that helps. If go ahead and try the homework. Let me know if you've got questions. Good luck.